Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino, and you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com. And today I have a very special guest. Her name is Annie Evans. Hey, Annie, how are you?
I'm really great. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. I'm glad to have you here. Before we get started, I want to leave our listeners and viewers with some of your information so they can get to know you, and then we can dive into the interview. So Annie is an international best-selling author, a speaker, and a coach. She has had an amazing life full of adventures, but also has survived and thrived numerous devastating life events. She's a start-over expert, having peeled herself off the floor on several occasions. As an angry young adult, she knew she had to change. She retired her brain and turned her limiting beliefs into new positive ones and drilled them into her subconscious mind. Now she wants to help others do the same. She has been a jack of all trades and a successful in many trades and businesses. Her new international best-selling book, Live for a New Day, is available on Amazon and from the author directly. Annie Evans has traveled the world and lived and worked in many interesting, beautiful, and fascinating places. She has used her love for the work rather than the finances to guide her career. From horse trainer, celestial navigator, 44,000 sea miles log, fashion design, architecture, real estate development, and construction, and many, many more. Wow, like I'm like already like, this is very interesting. Like you talk about a life full of adventures and a lot of great things going on. Definitely want to tap into some of that stuff. And you tell us more about it. Before we do that, though, I want to know, where are you from? What is your upbringing as a kid? And give us some of that history.
Okay, so where do I start? I have many, many stories.
Yeah.
I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, but I wasn't there for very long. My dad got moved from Cincinnati. He was World War II. He was one of the first Domo Victor meteorological radar users in aircraft. And so they moved us out to California. I love California. I have lived in almost every part of California, and including Yosemite. I had a stepfather who was a ski instructor, and so I got to ski every day and do many things. Lived in Big Sur, Monterey, Carmel. And, I had a very, very mentally ill mother, and she was quite abusive. So despite all the beauty and other things going on that were great in my life, it was super difficult. I ended up losing both my mother and my brother to mental illness. And at the same time, I just kept persevering. And I always, I really wanted to love what I was doing. So the horses I loved, and I got somewhat successful in that. Then I went sailing for a number of years, and that was a triple university degree in international survival. That boat actually got lost at sea. I had left, and it got turned over in a really big storm, and all souls on board were lost. So that was another start over moment for me. But I really thought I felt like my life was over because I loved everybody and it was a huge part of my life. But I just knew that, I had the rest of my life to live. So I got up, and now through some of what I've done, I kept getting up no matter what. And I continued to climb the ladder, and it's always gotten better. So I really do want to help other people know that you can always start over, and you can build up your bounce back muscles for things like what we're going through right now with all the fear and uncertainty and sudden and radical changes. So that's why I'm here. I really
Yeah.
do want to help people.
I love that. And I wanted to kind of take it back a little bit. And I want to understand from your perspective, you live in that life of an abusive, not perhaps not that good of a life, with your mom and brother, and also especially losing them to mental illness. What was that for Annie? What was that for you as a kid or a young adult, or whenever that took place in your life growing up? And what did that do to you? Because the next thing I want to get to is, in your bio, we talked about you're a very angry person, right? And so I want to know if something led to that, or I want to be able to understand that more.
Okay. So, again, I lived in beautiful places, so things weren't always bad, but the abuse from my mother would get more and more. I remember at 8 years old, we went into a bathroom, and she was 6'2", and I was only 8. So, and we actually had a physical battle and my little girl inside just said, "No, you're not going to do this to me." So it was a bit fierce.
Yeah.
But several years after that, and many changes, and at the same time, a lot of exciting things were happening in the world back in the very early 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So I became an adult fairly rapidly and ended up, doing a lot of things that I shouldn't be doing at that young age. But she got institutionalized, and I, was fine with that. I thought she should have been institutionalized a long time ago, but she asked me when she got out from that first time to please come live with her again, and that she was like all good now and everything. And so I did. But not too long after that, again, the abuse started and everything. So I had lots of friends around where I was, and so I sort of removed myself from her house.
Mm-hmm.
But I went back to the house one day and to get more things because I thought she was supposed to be at school. She was supposed to be at school. And I opened the door, and she's standing there, and she's got this huge butcher knife in her hand. And she's screaming at me, "You're coming to kill me, you're coming to kill me." And I'm going, "You're the one with the butcher knife." But it chased me around the house. And I was able to escape out the front door, and I ran away. And I ran away with a much older boyfriend, and we went completely across the country. I mean, had many adventures, and we could spend hours just talking about that. And so, and I was getting older. I was only 13 when we got to New York. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I heard my dad had the FBI following us across the country. And so we drove immediately back to San Francisco, and I called my dad's house, and I went back home to his house. And that was here in Malibu. And I finished high school, albeit I think all in all, I went 1/8 of the time, but I finished on time with my class and everything. And so at that point, as I graduated from high school, is where I knew I wanted to be somebody. I knew I had the capability of being somebody, but that's where I had the hugest chip on my shoulder, just like, and I thought I was just, I knew it all. I had survived all this, and finally I saw, the way people were looking at me because I just had this edge. And finally, I realized, this is not going to help me make it out in the world, because the people standing in front of me that could really help me, I'm like repelling them. So that's when I went searching for how could I, regain just a positive attitude. I really did know I wanted to be somebody productive and helpful. And so I searched and searched, and a lot of those things are still in me, that I had many great mentors and things happen. But I fell upon a book that this was in the very late 70s, early 80s, and it was by David K. Reynolds, and he had started the constructive living movement. And that's the basis of, my whole process that's helped me start over and over and over. And that helped me to retrain my brain and really work on myself. And, it starts with very, because I was depressed. I was, not really positive.
Yeah.
But just following and training, now it's really hard to get me really angry. I
cannot even see you being an angry person. Like, just talking to you, I don't get that feeling, right? So, and so it was really that experience and you going through different challenges through your life that put you in that angry stage, and also in that, as you mentioned, depression stage, right? It was really that upgrowing and upcoming in your life that led to that, right? And I think that a lot of people sometimes, when as they're growing or growing through life, one of the things that they face similar things as you do. It doesn't have to necessarily be from an abusive parent or anything like that. It could be multiple different things that get you to the two emotions that we talked about right now, which is either anger and or being depressed. And the challenge that many have is that they don't know how to get out of that, right? And I like what you said, and you mentioned that, and you said that you obviously had many different mentors, and then even reading this book by David K. Reynolds, all of that, sometimes it could be a simple change or a simple idea that can help you shift things little by little, right? And a lot of times it's from one step to another, right? And I think that for you did a lot of that, right?
Yes. And so I really believe through my own experiences, and these are my really true life experiences, some really great and some not so good, but that we really have the capability, if we set our minds to it, to really change and frame our life and live the life that we want to live. Too many of us get stuck kind of on remote control. And, we're just living our lives, and we think that our emotions and our feelings are, they're only a small part. We need to be able to train ourselves to take charge of our feelings. They're always there. I'm not denying them, trust me. But at the same time, and that's what I started with, is just a couple minutes a day going, feelings, go away. I'm going to get up and I'm going to wash the dishes. I'm going to do what needs to get done. And then just building on it and building on it. Now, hopefully everybody else isn't in the same dire straits as I was, but I believe everybody, and the different levels of my having to go through this process has shown me that it really works, that it really takes work, but it's doable. If you really want to make a change, and if you really want to reach out to your purpose and passion, you can. You just have to do the work.
Yeah, I love that. And the other thing you mentioned earlier too is you were falling down so many times that you kept getting up no matter what. You just kept going no matter what. And again, going back to your message right now too, is if you really want that change, you can definitely make that change. You just really want to have it and do it as much as you desire that, right? And so that's critical in many different aspects. Tell me a little bit about your book. What was the purpose of writing your book, and what was the intent? What is the message intended to be?
So that's a bit of a story, which actually kind of hopefully will help other people also see their lives in a different way. So on top of all the badness, I had all these adventures. So I always want, and also because I had been successful in business, even though I was pretty well self-taught, I had to fight against not having a college degree and all of these things. And yet I was senior management and pretty successful, real successful actually. And I was really good at things, but I had to, through all of the stuff that I've just been talking about, I never told anybody about most of it. And very rarely. If I could really help somebody in an instant by sharing, hey, I was there too, then I would. But I had a meeting with Ryan Long. I don't know if you've heard of him. He just recently passed. And he was the founder of City Gala and the City Summit, and also Global Unity, which we are trying to keep going on into the future because he just wanted to help the world. But it was our first one-to-one, and he told me about his life, and I went, oh man, he's had it at least as bad as I have, if not worse, and here he is. And so he said, Annie, you have to, I told him my story. He said, Annie, you have to tell your story. You can help so many people. And I go, no, Ryan, that's not what I do. I mean, literally, honestly, I had just left chunks out of my life on all my resumes, all my job interviews, everything. And I could, but I had been questioning myself. Now you're going to write a book. What are you, how are you going to? Because I'm really honest, and I was able to not tell people, but I didn't tell lies. You understand?
Yeah.
But so I was driving home that night, and I just went, you know what, Annie, this is going to be really hard on you because you've kept all this stuff in, but just go out and expose everything. And even your family, your friends, they might be a little shocked, but do it. So then I started talking to people about, how I should do it. And in this book, I was told, come up with 6 times that you've been able to start over from some sort of tragedy or event. And that's how the book came to be. There's more than 6 stories in there, but there's 6 major chapters. And it's all about, how to get up and
do it again.
Start over. And it's not always easy. I mean, it does take time. Like after the boat was lost, I had, my head under the covers for a while, and I was just really questioning everything. But you can really, really start over, really reinvent yourself, and even improve, no matter how drastic things have been in the past. So so that's how the book came about, and it has stories about me and then how I regained, each time. And then I have another book that isn't out yet, and it's more about the real process of this is what you can do. And I try and really I use my intuition a lot, so it's all about, where are you, and here's some things that you could do, and hopefully I can guide some people into new lives.
Yeah, there's 2 things that you mentioned that I want to point out, and our viewers and listeners to take on this. Number one, you said that you kind of had to expose yourself, and beyond just exposing yourself, you had to put out this information or do something, right, that even it was going to shock your friends or family, right? And that by itself, in many things that we do, a lot of times because of that fear of what is my mom, my dad, my brother, my wife, my whatever, right? Family, some sort of family member, or my friends going to think about whatever it is that I'm doing. And again, this could be in business. This could be a business idea that I'm trying to go from A to B, never done it before. Yeah. Yet we start thinking about how our friends or family are going to perceive that, or even a decision within yourself, like you're trying to become a better person, and people are going to be laughing at you like, what, you're not eating that fat food, you're not going to have a hamburger because, wait, we're doing this all together kind of thing, right? And a lot of times we allow that to limit us from
Mm-hmm.
doing it and moving forward. So I love the fact that you reinstated and reaffirmed that even if you're gonna shock your friends and family, you gotta do it, right? You just gotta
Yeah.
go out and do it. And so that's very, very critical, right?
I really believe it's true, and I'm not, discounting, all the relationships and
Right.
everything. But if you want to be really true to yourself, and that's, I think, the first thing, core thing that we all need to do. And if you're going, and I was in many times, although I lived a good life, when I wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
her. We have to really like live for ourselves. And
Right.
that's actually going to make us a much better person for all the people around me. And in some cases, unfortunately, we surround ourselves with the wrong people. And I'm pretty direct about sharing about, what kind of hard changes do you need to make in order to meet your purpose and passion and live your goals and the life you really want to live. But hopefully it all blends together. And but we got to work at this, and really we all have something to share with the world, and the more centered we are and the more prepared we are to really live our purpose and passion.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And then the other thing you talked about, again, which I think is a critical point that, again, it would help us, or it's not helping us, it's actually limiting us, is that self-sabotage or the talking down to ourselves, right? When you
Yeah,
were talking about
absolutely.
writing your book and you said, well, who's going to read my book, or, what you mentioned, right? You were already kind of talking yourself out of doing that book because you yourself didn't believe in that, or you yourself were telling, there was these little voices behind you telling you, right, that was not you. And again, you got to be able to fight through those things, and you got to be able to put those things aside. I like the fact that you mentioned too that you got to train yourself to be able to deal with your emotions and your feelings, and even
Yeah.
those voices, and say, hey, wait a minute, I need, I hear you, whatever the case may be, and let me acknowledge that and just throw that away because I need to do this. I need to move forward, right?
Yeah.
And that's critical because,
Yeah.
again, I went through that myself too when I wrote my first book. I literally talked myself out of starting my first book until I changed that way of thinking and say, hey, no, I'm going to do this, right? And again, that could be with many different things. When I left corporate America, I talked myself out of it. And it took me, from the day that I actually wanted to quit, it took me 7 months to actually take my leap of faith and become a full-time entrepreneur, because I told myself that was not going to be me, that I couldn't do that. And again, I talked myself out of it. So again, there's numerous examples of how people can really do this to themselves. And we
Yeah.
have to just push through that,
I think that's like the number one thing. We're always telling ourselves, we're not good enough, or we can't do this. And we should just be saying the exact opposite. I've been in your shoes where, and I stayed in corporate partly because I really loved it. And I was traveling the world. I was a supply chain director and all of that. But on the other hand, I should have left much earlier for my own health and sanity. But we can't just live the way people expect us to. We really have to live for ourselves. And fortunately, even that all worked to my favor because, I really did get to travel the world and the company was paying for it. And I love cultures. I love people. Speaking of the time now, we're all human. And um, yeah, but that's the first thing I start telling people when I'm coaching is first to learn how to set your feelings aside just for a few minutes and do something positive and tell yourself, look in the mirror and tell yourself how much you love yourself and how good you are. Because that's how, it takes a long time to really reach your subconscious. So we every time you hear yourself say, I can't do this, or I really want to, but my wife won't like it, or something like that. No, 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 no.
Yeah, you got to stop that. Yeah, definitely. Um, I want to hear, before I get to another topic, I want to hear a little bit about the decision that went on in you living your, I said, you were traveling with a company. They were paying for the trips, having all this, glamorous life, and I can relate to that because that's one thing that I love about my corporate job. I get to travel all over the place, and all of it was on the company, right? And so it was good being part of that experience. I want to understand your thought process as to why you decided to live that life and become who you are now. And you're also a agent, a real estate agent too. So why going to your own business per se versus working for somebody else?
Well, first of all, most of my life I've had my own business on the side.
Okay.
I would have like a salary job, and then I had other, like I had my own company called Build Art where I do project management, bookkeeping, and stuff like that. So I was able to live pretty well. But then I got involved with a company called Ironclad Performance Wear, and it was a startup. This is like almost 20 years ago, or anyway, I won't do the numbers. And I had the expertise from working for other product companies where I was able to come in and really help this company get started. And I was there for as a consultant and then full-time employee for about 16 years. And again, it enabled me to travel the world and meet all these people. And honestly, I have so many friends from overseas in the factories because I had developed such trust in these factories and with the owners and everything. At the same time, I go back to my office and it's all like not that great camaraderie. I'll just leave it there. But the company started really having problems, and so financial, and I, with the trust of the factories, was still getting inventory because they trusted me. So at a certain point I couldn't leave until I made them whole, until I knew that they were okay. So all of that happened, and now we're like, really, I started at like 4 million in the company, and it was like at 26 million, and we had survived all this stuff. And then the board of directors brought in a new CEO, and he actually walked into my office after almost 20 years and said, Annie, you've done so much for this business, but things change, and so today will be your last day and you can take the rest of the day off. And I'm like, drop.
Wow.
You got it, dude. I'm out of here. And so I didn't exactly choose to leave, although it was constantly in my mind, you shouldn't be doing this to yourself because it's a lot of negativity.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, so somebody definitely helped you with that decision, right? If anything. Um, Annie, one thing that I want to touch on, we specifically right now as the recording of this, we're going through a couple of different challenges throughout, not just well, first we were going through a major challenge, which is the COVID-19 worldwide, and then now more recently, we're going through now what it seems to be a national challenge for the U.S. And we're seeing a lot of riots, a lot of things that are just that shouldn't be happening, yet they're still happening for whatever reason. And so we're definitely in some times that are very uncertain to an extent. And I before I asked you, you said something that I think is very, very critical. In times like what we are going through now, fear and uncertainty is a constant companion. It is important that we don't let fear run our lives, right? And just based on that right there, I feel like, perhaps the people or certain people that are participating in these riots, that definitely are not peaceful riots. What is your take on that? Because I think, yes, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's that fear, and then we are letting all these different things, circumstances, whatever the case may be, run our lives, and the decisions that people are making right now, they're just very devastating and sad. So I want to hear your opinion about that.
Don't get me started. Watch out. Well, first of all, fear and uncertainty, it's a constant companion in many different ways, in many different realms. And what we need, again, is going back to controlling your feelings. if we really are able to set the fear aside, even like, so COVID came and we all had to stay at home, and many people kind of, just shrunk into their, and just worried the whole time. And other people, and I'm in a big circle of networkers and entrepreneurs. So take this time and, do what you weren't able to do before. And, so there's a balance, but living in fear and uncertainty under almost any circumstance is not going to be overwhelmingly productive. So you need to find a way to channel your energy into something that is productive. So that goes through everything, including to where we are right now. And I never thought I was going to have to live. I lived through SARS. I lived through H1N1, bird flu. And I was in Hong Kong. I was in China. And, so these things actually are controllable. It helps if you have good leadership. I won't go further on that, but we have to take care of ourselves the best way that we can. And, there's a lot of people that are trying to help us do that. And then so suddenly we have another one too many deaths of a Black person at the hands of the cops. And this is like the most egregious thing I've ever seen. And I'm 68 years old. I've seen a long range of these things continuing to happen, and it goes back 400 years. And so, when are we gonna just get the education, the mindset that we're all human and we all need to live together, or we're gonna destroy each other? And that's really, really critically happening now. So in the 60s and 70s, I fought like just out there on the streets with everybody. I thought that we had really changed the world, and we did. I was a student of the Institute for the Study of Nonviolence. That was Joan Baez, who was a mentor of mine. She was a next door neighbor, so we were really close. And Ira Sandpearl. And, we went out and, with a lot of people, and I'm going to just say there's a lot of really good protesters out there that need to be there and need to fight for what's right, and just sit down, don't go up against the cops. Because I swear, when in my time, we would sit down and, mostly the cops would just sit there and look at us. Sometimes we handed them flowers and things like that. But there's a lot of people out there, and it's a lot of energy in this country that is based on conspiracy theories. It's not the left-wing people doing this. These are legitimate concerns, and there's people taking advantage of the situation. The same back with the Watts riots and Rodney King, as far as just, let's, we can just wipe out this liquor store and we can burn and pillage this. And those people are not protesters. They're destructors, destroyers. I don't know how you stop them. But the unfortunate part that I've seen over the last couple days is that the really true, and I've seen some, I'm kind of glued to this. It's a passion. I'm like, come on, let's save the world. Let's stop this. It's been 400 years. Let's really do something. But they're a little bit getting set aside because of all the other nastiness going on. So hopefully will prevail. I don't know. We have to.
I definitely agree with you. And I like the other thing you mentioned is this time is our first opportunity, and the time is our most precious commodity. And again, when I look at the things that are going on right now with COVID-19, that's something that we're all going through it. Everybody's been affected by it some shape or form. And although that is controllable and it can be controlled to an aspect, it's something we got to continue to go through as we find something better and different. The riots, though, and how just seeing the fact that cities across the states are being destroyed, and again, a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people, with all this whole COVID-19, like there's so many different factors going into that is sad to see why people even will come out and just take and destroy and create more chaos and just fight with violence, burning stuff. I mean, like when you think about all of that, it's like it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like you have to be able to control your emotions. You have to be able to go back and see that any of that is not helping, by the way, number one. Number two, if is this the time that we want to be able to remember? Like, again, that moment, all of those places that were broken into, all those places that were burned down, that led a very vivid picture in time. In that time, we cannot go back and fix that. It is what it is. It's done. It's gone. And so we have to be able to sit back and say, hey, or like you said, sit down and just say, we're going to be peacefully, we're going to create a message that for sure needs to be out. Yet we're not going to destroy our own communities, our own lives, our own, I just don't get that. And so I think a lot of it comes back to, what we're talking about is, one, I think is very critical to have that mindset. Number two, as the podcast is, you can overcome anything. Is we can overcome this hurdle. We can overcome this whatever might have happened with the African American lives and things like that. We can overcome that by creating more sustainable process, or by creating all the different things. And so it comes down to educating and really seeing things from that perspective, right?
Yeah. So I wanted to mention on this COVID thing, the same people that are probably out there looting and creating the violence are also in denial about the COVID. A lot of people are thinking that it's some sort of political action. The virus doesn't have sides. It's, and I'm seeing, and so now they're all out there and creating not only the destruction of the cities, but probably a negative effect on the whole COVID situation. If we all really stayed close to what we know is safe, which is washing our hands, wearing a mask, taking care of our immune system, we'd be better off. But you mentioned education. And I think all of this, including mental illness, including the, poor treatment of Blacks by the police and the racist, it's all a systemic result of too much lack of education where it counts. I am self-educated. Maybe that's why I have a better, wider expansion of, belief. But, we don't teach people to be whole people. We don't teach people financial literacy. We don't really, and, when I grew up, in school, we studied and memorized the founding papers. We knew that this government is the only democracy in the planet, the true democracy, and we're destroying it. And since basically even before I graduated from high school, we stopped teaching it. And so people are out there and they're completely ignorant. Some of the textbooks that I've seen are flat out misinformation, not giving and denying of critical facts, like the Holocaust, like the Civil Rights Movement. They mention it in the little, it's all over the place. But we need to teach people how to really live from their soul and their core, and to value human life and to value each other. And no matter where you come from or what your religion is or anything, we're all human. And I've gotten to, sit across the table from all different cultures, and I can't say that there's anyone that I haven't had, I have a few negative, but mostly it's all positive. If you're sitting there and eating their food and they're so graciously giving it to you, there's no way you can hate that person.
Mm. Yeah.
And it's like, if we were just doing that more, I know many people haven't hardly been out of their own neighborhoods. And, you know, that's just something I don't know, we just need to change our whole system. I really feel like it. And I don't think it's that hard. You know, I'm not the only self-educated person that's been real successful. You know, look at Bob Proctor. He only has a high school degree also.
Mm-hmm.
I just went to Kenya last year with the Unstoppable Foundation, which a lot of the schooling that they do over there is based on his curriculum. And these girls, you know, coming out in the Masamara, you know, that's just like, you know, you know, it's only been coming awake in the past few years. You know, these girls could come here and speak to anybody. They're so well-rounded and
Mm-hmm.
positive. And I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be the president. And they're just like whole people. And, you know, there's a lot of whole people here. I'm not trying to say that there isn't, but we don't emphasize problem solving, you know, all the things, you know, emotional health, you know, and all of these things, we just like set it aside like it doesn't matter. And yet those are the most important things in the world.
Yeah, and one thing that I want to add to that is that we have 86,400 seconds in one day, right? And just like time, and well, that's time, right? And so
Yeah.
with time, you know, what do you do with that time, the 24 hours or those 86,000 seconds, it was going to make a big difference. So I do believe, I'm a firm believer when it comes down to education. And obviously you have your traditional education and you have your non-traditional education where you're self-taught. And again, we have so many different resources, whether it's through this podcast, whether it's to picking up your book, getting my book, getting whatever the case may be. There's so many different things where people have to just take a little bit of that chunk of those 86,400 seconds and start, you know, educating themselves through either reading, through listening to a podcast, to just finding an area of interest and just getting more educated with that. And it's not that difficult. And some of these things are not necessarily expensive when it comes down to that. You're
No,
not right. I have a master's degree, and my master's degree cost me a lot of money. And as you mentioned, they didn't teach me financial literacy. They didn't teach me all these different things. Again, it's good that I have that. Yet you can get something for either free or a couple of $100, and you can start learning. And I think that's so critical. And we forget about that sometimes, especially now in this time where we are, you know, to an extent quarantine. You know, instead of sitting on the couch and watching TV or, you know, whatever, you know, a movie or something to that extent, or something that's not really helping you move forward, pick up a book, listen to some podcasts, start thinking, visualizing, and all these different things. I'm a great believer of that. And also, you talked about the unconscious mind. We have to feed the unconscious mind the right ingredients, right, to move forward.
Right. I mean, the right teacher here and there, I know for me, made all the difference, but I still remember the bad ones too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have to have better, you know, screening of that. But it's like, if we can find in ourselves just the real desire to really learn. I spent, you know, back when I was educating myself, you know, the only thing I could do is go through the drawers at the library and, okay, I'm going to read this, I'm going to read this, and, you know, now we have, you know, just in our phones, we can educate ourselves on anything. And please, people, fact check yourself. There's so much misinformation, and it's really scary for me to see how many people are believing in nonsensical conspiracy. You know, Joe Scarborough did not kill his assistant or whoever she, you know, I mean, just on and on and on. And that the virus is, you know, sent over by China. We should bomb China. Well, I have enough experience with viruses that I know that that's just not the case.
Yeah.
You know, maybe there was some uncleanliness or something, but it's not a vicious thing that China's trying to do. So we need to really have better thought and question everything and make our own decisions from, you know, really looking at all sides.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. So, Annie, before I let you go, I have a couple more questions for you. I wanted to know if people wanted to get a hold of you and reach out to you, how can they do that?
Well, one thing I should mention is that I just took off my book off of Amazon
Mm,
because I'm going to relaunch it. But I do have a website for it. It's www.live for a new day. And I have a couple interviews on there, Jack Canfield and actually and myself
nice.
on another one. But anyway, all my information is there, and I can share my cell phone number. It's 310-621-0456, and I hopefully can give you my email and everything later. But I welcome anybody to call me for a brief call. I do ordinarily offer that, and see where we can go. And
Yeah, awesome. And then, do you have any specific habits or rituals that you do on a day-to-day basis?
well, they change.
Okay.
Honestly, right now, I've been kind of driven, and so I know that I'm setting some of the things, like I need to do more work on, I'm overweight and stuff, and I get it, but I'm so passionate about really trying to get the word out there, and it's so that's taking precedent. But and in my books, I do, I mean, there's many things, like sometimes it's just like, get up and shout, go hug a tree,
Mm,
it's different for everybody, but I have a beautiful yard. I can see it right here. And, you know, just a couple seconds of looking at it can just change my state. So
mm,
changing your state is really impossible. I mean, important. It's really, and it's not, it is very possible. It
yeah,
just can take the littlest thing. You should be able to snap your fingers and boom, it's gone. You're
yeah,
into a whole different state. That's different for everybody. And I use many tools. And, I spend time relaxing and trying to let my brain do the wandering of whatever it wants to do. But yeah, I'm excited about the future, and I'm excited about, when I really get back on my physical program. But
yeah.
I'm really also just proud of myself for what I'm trying and doing.
Yeah, no,
I
I love that.
really,
I love that message. If you want to change your emotions, which you can change your emotions, either just you're giving examples. Either go hug a tree or look outside or whatever the case may be. Find something, find a happy medium that you can remember, and then that can start shifting your attention to something that's positive,
mhm,
happy, and it can take you outside of that negative state or whatever state you're going through. And we do have the power to change our emotions, instantly. It's
yeah,
just you wanting to be able to do that on the unconscious level, right?
yeah.
So that's powerful. And then the last question I have for you is, you've given us a lot of great tips. So hopefully you can give me one more. If
I'll try.
right, if people that are listening to us, they're going through some sort of challenge in their life right now, regardless of that challenge, what would be one advice that you can give them that they can overcome that challenge?
Well, what I think I sort of touched on before is many of us don't really look at our lives. We know that something's bothering us, most likely a job, but it could be anything. And, so the first thing I try to do with people, and that they can do themselves, is to really, you know, start just writing down words. I love my life because
Mm,
I'm grateful for, and, list all of those things. What would I want to change? What is doing me harm? Put all those lists together, and then do real emotional, and what makes you happy. If you could have any job in the world, what would it be? I mean, I did this over and over and over with myself, and I have tools. I can even see them on my bookcase now, that I would be really sharing with people, that can facilitate them to really go through this process. And even just a little bit, even just writing down 5 of each of those things and going, you know what, I really have to change this. And then if you work at it, you're going to find that you get there, and that's good. But then you're going to go, it's going to be something else, or it's going, okay, now I see this. Always have dreams and goals in sight. They are within your power to reach them. And so it's really important for all of us to focus on, you know, to see clearly what we really want. Because what the mind can conceive, we can achieve. That's a abomination of Napoleon Hill's saying.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is. I love that. Actually, I've been reading that book. I'm reading it right now. I've read it plenty of times before, and it's one of those things where you got to keep going back and forth because there's always something new. And as you're developing yourself, that self-growth, you start seeing things from different perspectives. So it's always good to go back and revisit that. I'm a firm believer of that too. Yeah. So, Annie, thank you. That was great, wonderful. I love it. Definitely, that exercise is huge. And so, for the listeners, please make sure that you try to incorporate something to that. It can help you in your own journey if you are going through some sort of challenges, right? So, nevertheless, Annie, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to say before I let you go?
I want to really thank you. I want to really thank you for the time and openness that you allowed me to share with people, and I hope that we could connect again soon.
Definitely. I love it. Thank you so much.
Stay strong, everybody.
Yes,
stand
definitely.
up for what's right. We got to really come forward these days.
We do. Definitely we do. So thank you so much again, Annie. And for the rest of you guys, thank you so much for staying in this podcast. Please do me a favor. Make sure you comment, share, and like, subscribe to the channel and to this podcast. You can find us in all platforms. And stay tuned to the next interviews. We'll see you at the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Bye.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you tuned in to this podcast. You can find me at Spreaker.com, where you can like and subscribe. And to learn more about myself and my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at Facebook under Cesar R. Espino. Once again, thanks for joining me. I am looking forward to having you at the next episode, and know that you truly can overcome anything.